Welcome to Rules and Regulations. What is the number one rule for inspection? That is to be able to execute the operation in a safe, reliable, and repeatable way. I'm going to introduce you to the resources that will answer your questions to help you fly safer. You must understand more than just airspace. Pleading ignorance is not a defense. Get ready to gain access to flight information. It's time for your flight briefing. Do you think drones are intrusive? We're going to discuss what makes them scary and the current public issues. From the Federal Aviation Administration to your neighbor, we're going to introduce you to some of the resources to get your permissions, authorizations, and waivers to fly. We will share access to the recreational and operational rules to determine what kind of pilot you are. And then finally, we're going to look into the future and discuss the new rules that will change flight forever. Are drones intrusive or are they commonplace? We're going to investigate how they're being seen, heard, collecting data, and the legal misunderstandings that might scare the general public. Drones can be seen. Most people will see a remote pilot before looking for a drone. They actually had no idea that there was a drone in the sky. The realization can bring fear and curiosity. Drone sightings are being reported daily. Drones can be heard. They can be as loud as a bag of bees. Advancements in propeller design has reduced the noise, almost making them silent. We live in a world of sophisticated spy tools. Cell phones and computers have cameras, microphones, access to the internet, and GPS locators. Personal private rights are being addressed at all levels of government. The main issues being addressed are approvals for flight and discovery rights. The questions of privacy infringement and private property infringement are being addressed in the lower courts. The end result, hopefully, is for laws that are fair and reasonable. Security rights are similar to personal privacy rights. The main issues being addressed are infringements to personal and property rights. Do not shoot at a drone. A drone has been designated as an aircraft. If you interfere with a drone in flight, it could crash, causing damage to persons or property on the ground. Or it could collide with other objects in the air. The big questions to every drone operation is, who grants permission? And who's in charge? The Federal Aviation Administration is concerned about the safe national airspace. However, you also have additional permissions, authorizations, and restrictions being placed upon by the federal government, state governments, and local governments on where you can fly. The Federal Aviation Administration was created in 1958. They have a set of rules for both recreational and commercial drone flights. Access the FAA UAS website and discover what it can do for you. Learn how to register your drone, become a pilot, and understand the operational rules. This is the most recommended site for uncrewed operations. The federal government's concern is the United States National Defense Airspace. This includes flying near stadiums and sporting events, near airports, in security-sensitive airspace restrictions, restricted or special use airspace, and Washington, D.C. When large events are occurring at stadiums or venues, UAS operations are prohibited within a radius of 3 nautical miles. This temporary flight restriction begins 1 hour before and ends 1 hour after the scheduled time of events. Some examples include Major League Baseball, National Football League, college football, a NASCAR, Indy, the NCAA Division I championships. Cannot fly 1 hour before to 1 hour after the scheduled time of events. Some no-fly zones are specifically marked, such as national parks. You can't fly there. Pilots are requested to maintain a minimum altitude of 2,000 feet above the surface. TFRs, also known as temporary flight restrictions, limits air traffic because of the temporary hazardous conditions. Approved flights will require permissions. The TFR will contain information about the restriction, including the size, altitude, time period that it's in effect, and what types of operations are restricted and permitted. From personal experience, when a temporary flight restriction is in place, you will not be able to fly your drone unless you have gained permission. A NOTAM means Notice to Airmen and can reflect areas which have flight restrictions, such as Disney World in Orlando, Florida has a permanent flight restriction which began on October 27, 2014 and lasts for 29 years. NOTAMs will also be shown on the active TFR list on the FAA UAS website. Security-sensitive airspace restrictions are areas where drones are prohibited from flying. These include national security-sensitive facilities such as military bases and critical infrastructures like nuclear power plants. The restriction applies to all types and purposes of drone operations and remains in effect 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Restricted areas have the existence of unusual hazards. These hazards could affect your ability to fly safely in the area. Restricted airspace requires notifications and permissions. You do not gain permission by clicking a box saying that you are the responsible party on your drone. Flying a drone within 15-mile radius of Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport in Washington, D.C. is prohibited. It is the most restrictive area in the country. A special flight rules area exists between 15 miles to 30 miles outside of the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. It can be flown as long as the Part 107 pilot applies for a waiver and it is granted. State governments are also engaged in drone rules and regulations. Along with the adoption of the federal rules, the common issues being addressed in legislation include defining what a drone is, how they can be used by law enforcement or other state agencies, how they can be used by the general public, and their use in hunting and fishing. Some states have been more proactive in their rules regarding drone use than others. So be sure to do a quick search to see the rules in the state you are flying in. Since local jurisdictions cannot lay claim to flights in the air, they are claiming that they are in control of the ground. This means you cannot take off or land inside their jurisdiction. Flying in a neighborhood can sometimes be tricky. Informed neighbors are likely to feel more at ease. Be sure to make attempts at notifying anyone who would be impacted by a drone operation. This includes mailers, emails, phone texts, caution tape, safety cones, and placards.